G'day, Tennille Chalmers. Welcome back to DDHQ.
Thank you so much, Tom.
Did you know that, I think you probably did know, that you were the very first winemaker that we ever did a video with back in the garage where we started the business.
I do remember that.
12 years ago.
It feels like a million years ago, but yeah, I do recall that moment. That was great. That was good times.
It was good fun, wasn't it?
Yeah,
we were talking about Vermentino, I think.
We're still talking about Vermentino 12 years later.
Still Italian varieties. What a surprise.
Yeah.
Hey, it's so great to catch up, and there's so much going on with Chalmers always, but there is this, I guess, common thread across all of your wines, and the brand is about this amazing exploration and pioneering into Italian varieties in Australia. And I just want to have a bit of a chat a little bit about that, about where Chalmers, how Chalmers got the inspiration for that and where it's come from and where it is now and what's happening in the future. So, I'm going to pour a glass of wine. We're going to do it backwards. We're going to start with the red.
We can do anything.
We can do anything because that's how the Chalmers people do it. They're always breaking the rules.
We are breaking the rules.
And this is the Nero d'Avola. It's a 2022 Nero d'Avola. And I thought a good talking point for, I guess, a little bit about the story of Chalmers.
Yeah, absolutely. How long have we got? It's a big story.
3 hours. 3 hours. Buckle in.
No, it is a great spot to start. Chalmers story. Let's go back to, I'll do the quick version.
Yes, please.
Go back to the Australian wine industry in the 90s.
Yeah.
The big boom. Lots of Shiraz and Chardonnay planted in all sorts of different regions across Australia because there was huge success with obviously our Australian wines, particularly in the UK market. UK could not get enough of the Australian wine industry's wines at the time. So pretty much every man and his dog in every wine region just was like, we're putting vineyards in, we're putting in Shiraz, we're putting in Chardonnay because there was such a solid home and sale and demand for those varieties. Two pretty adaptable varieties as well. Like you can plonk them almost anywhere and, they can really thrive. But there are only two varieties and there's so many wine varieties in the world, So boom, what goes up must come down. We're heading towards the late 1990s and our family, so Bruce and Jenni Chalmers started their vine nursery in the 90s. And we're part of, supplying a lot of those vine material to these people in Australia who were wanting to plant vineyards at the time. And then Mum and Dad were kind of like, there's all these orders coming through for these, just a handful of varieties. Of course, there was orders for Merlot and Cabernet and other varieties like that too. But, having their, and they're kind of farmers and viticulturists first and foremost, not wine makers or wine people at that time. But their understanding was that there are so many other wine varieties and grape varieties in the world. Yeah. Let's look to something else to try and add, diversify, perhaps seek out varieties that might suit particular individual climates within the Australian wine industry a little bit better than just plonking one or two varieties here, there and everywhere. So they worked together with some Italian consultants and vine nurseries over there. And Italy, obviously, big, beautiful country full of all sorts of, varieties right from the north to the south. There's so many native Italian varieties that we could and wanted to tap into to see what could work in Australia. So we really were leaning on these consultants and professionals in Italy to help guide us because, we couldn't go out there and at that time in the Australian wine scene and say, we love Italian Nero d'Avola. Let's, get that into Australia. Like the wines just weren't in Australia then.
So what was the reaction to those early, because Nero now has become a much more well-known, popular sort of variety in Australia. But in those early days, what did people think it's a very courageous thing for your parents to go out and...
That's a nice way of putting it.
Courageous.
Mad.
To bring these varieties in and really put everything, all eggs in one Italian basket.
I think it was the hard road, but we love playing the long game at Chalmers. Yeah. It's the flash in the pan stuff of the 90s. Australian wine industry. We didn't want to continue on with that style of business, basically. And when I say we, I mean, speaking for Australia. So we, looked towards bringing in these new varieties to help them slowly, gradually find their place in Australian, individual pockets, regions, climates, and, those original imports that we had first access to in kind of 98, 99, 2000, 2001, which, we're coming into kind of 25 years ago now. It was tricky because you're kind of saying, well, who wants to buy Nero d'Avola through the nursery? And everyone's like, what's Nero d'Avola? And I can't even say it properly, and I don't know, I feel uncomfortable not knowing how to pronounce it and things like that. So we were not wine producers then. And so what we decided to do was start making our own wines from these varieties that we've imported to help as a promotional marketing tool for the nursery. And that's how Chalmers Wine started,
that's
actually.
Amazing.
Yeah. So
you told me something amazing about the Nero before. What was that? What was that little fact that every Nero in Australia started with?
The one vine that we imported and got through quarantine it was about 2001.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So
and there's a fair bit of it now in Australia.
Yeah, it's a bit of a success story, and rightly so, because it's just delicious. And that's what's in our glass right
this
now.
is amazing. Yeah. It's so light and pretty, aromatically and juicy, but it's got that kind of savoury backbone to it as well. I think Nero just makes the perfect kind of like lunchtime red.
Yep, 100%.
Which is when I like to have my red wines.
And I think that, we've evolved. I think that what we've evolved as consumers is such a daggy word, but as drinkers in Australia is to, really find a long-term spot in what we like to enjoy in our glass in this category of wine. It's fresh, it's bright, it's pretty, it's not too heavy. You can pop it in the fridge if you're having a barbecue if you want to in summer.
It's just perfect red for like Australian conditions, not only to grow but to consume, right?
But there's a big thing that what we do at Chalmers is really important to share, and you can totally quote me on this. We're not
recording the whole thing. I'm not sure if you're aware, but there's a camera. Is there a camera?
Yes, I'm joking. We're not out to make trend wines or trendy wines. We want to grow, promote, release wines that are here to stay. And they're here to stay because they make sense in the climate and in the winery and in the glass and in the vineyards. So, yes, Nero is a success story because it has found so many great homes across the Australian wine landscape. But we don't want this, boom, because what goes up must come down. So we love when something like Nero finds a new home, and we want those Nero vines and vineyards to be there, for the next 50 years. Yeah. And not some next trend coming along and, you rip the Nero out because that's not cool anymore. And, we want longevity, and that's, another part of the sustainability message.
It's a really good point where you mentioned about other people having their vines, and for people that that maybe aren't in the wine trade understand quite how it works with Chalmers, but there are hundreds of winemakers from all around Australia that are either buying vines to plant in their own vineyard or just buying fruit to make their own wines. And so, it's every other day me and Wade get a call from someone with, a sustainably produced Heathcote, Fiano or Nero d'Avola or something on those lines, which has come from your vineyard. And I think it's so amazing because it's provided an entry point for new producers to come into the market and do different things, different styles, and also a way for established producers to expand what they're doing and have a play.
Yeah, and it's a super important part of our kind of structure of the, how we work with the varieties and at Chalmers is that we want to share them. It's these varieties that we've imported are not just for our own brands; they are for the greater good of the Australian wine industry. And that also means selling our grapes as well, because it is that stepping stone. Like someone might be interested in planting Fiano or Vermentino or Ribologella or whatever it might be. And it's like, let's get a few tons off Chalmers, have a play with it, see if it suits their style or their brand or whatnot. And then, sometimes from there they'll plant their own vineyard from those varieties, or they might continue to be a grape customer of ours, which, it's absolutely part of our business model in making sure that these varieties that we're completely investing in are accessible. Yeah. You don't have to have a vineyard to be able to have access to them. Yeah.
It's great. But yours are still the best.
Oh,
still the best.
No.
That's delicious.
But we do love,
it's so good.
We love seeing what other people do with our grapes, It's like, and sometimes we have catch-ups, with our grape customers and vineyard customers, just say, hey, bring along a bottle of something off our vineyard and we'll have a sit down and have a barbecue. And it's super cool.
A few wines.
Well, it's kind of like extended family,
We'll move on to the inside. I'll give you a little rinse. So that, I guess, is kind of how it's got started. And there were those early varieties, Vermentino, Fiano, Aglianico, the Sagretino we talked about. But this bush vine project
Yes.
I think is incredibly exciting. And I guess for those that don't know about what you're doing, give just the elevator pitch of these incredible wines. So there's 2 wines at the moment, isn't there?
Yes. And there will only be 2 wines.
Oh.
It's a little special pocket in our Murray-Darling vineyard, so just outside of Mildura.
So there's 2 vineyards. There's the Heathcote.
Yep.
And then there's the big vineyard out in
Murray-Darling.
Yeah.
They're actually about the same size.
Right.
Yeah. And so at the moment, both of them are about 35 hectares. Yep, 35 hectares. But there was this little pocket. Oh, God, where do I start with this? Because it's quite a story.
It's an amazing story.
So, first of all, Inzolia, which is also known as Ansonica, in Tuscany, it's grown and called Ansonica, or Inzolia from Sicily. I mean, it's not that common over here. It's not super well known. You're not rushing out and finding a heap of available Inzolias on the shelf. You might at different shops.
There's some.
Yeah,
There's some.
but it's not.
Inzolias.
It's not super common. And the red planting in that bushwine block is Negro Amaro. So obviously coming from Puglia, and typically a bit of an entry-level kind of co-op style wine out of Italy, like a staple, just good solid red, not too premium, bit more go-to. But so what we entirely rely on at Chalmers is relying on, how do the vines perform in our soil and our conditions and our climates, and then how do the grapes behave? Are they happy? Are they exhausted from the heat, in our dry climates? We can easily determine what's thriving and what's not, and what are the natural attributes that we love in varieties that, make wines and varieties easier to work with in terms of being really strong and confident all along the way of the grape growing, winemaking, and then wine process. So in the glass process. So both Inzolia and Negro Amaro from the bushvine block that we've decided to plant were deliberately selected because of their robust nature, their thick skins, their structure naturally in the wines, their sturdy vine structure as well. So we planted this incredible bushvine block, which is still just blowing our minds in terms of the nerdy stats out of it. But with a goal to see how dry growing we can grow grapevines in one of the hottest, driest regions that you can grow grapes in the world, which is the Murray-Darling region.
And you impersonate a bit of rain with it, so sprinkler, but I was reading even that is like far less than what these varieties would actually receive water-wise in Italy.
Yes, absolutely.
Which is remarkable. And you're saying how, the eradicating of weeds and the spacing of the vines just to make sure that every little drop of water
goes only to the vine. And look, deliberate rootstock was selected so that the roots naturally were going really deep down to search for that water below. Yeah. The topsoil is all sandy loam and limestone, which is typical of the site. So it's almost desert-like, like it's
really nothing else, anything like that in Australia with dry grown like that.
I don't think so. So we have the overhead irrigation in place, as you said, to mimic rainfall. So it's not like a dripper system or anything like that where the water goes specifically right to the under the vine, as it does in normal irrigation.
Pretend Italians walking around as well?
No, it would be fun. But no, so and it's really only a response to how the vines are performing in the summer and the hot conditions is when we will turn the irrigation on, which is super rare.
Yeah, and you had a few cooler.
Yeah, we've had some cool. Yeah. But
that's super cool.
A little nerdy stat is commercial wine production in the big kind of corporate world of wine growing in our region, in the Murray-Darling region, and regions like Riverland and things like that. The irrigation applied can be something like, up to 6 megalitres a hectare. When we add up the natural rainfall and the irrigation on the bushvine block, which we are deliberately trying to keep at an absolute minimum, we can do, there's vintages that we've only applied like half a megalitre a hectare of irrigation in the growing season, which is just nuts. If anyone's ever been to Mildura, the summer is hot and dry.
And to take, the wine is delicious. Like the Negro Amaro is juicy and
gorgeous, aromatic.
And this thing is textural and rich, but it still has like a freshness and
there's no
like, well. It doesn't feel heavy or clunky or anything.
No, and we're really surprised and excited by what's in the glass. We are as I said, we're pretty much blown away by what the block is doing. And we are so thrilled to release wines from our cultural home, which is the Murray-Darling region, even though we've also got the Heathcote vineyard as well. Just saying, you know what, we don't have to be commercial production only. We can aim really high and treat these vines with, you know, and the site with as much care as possible, and craft these wines that are kind of, in the glass, they're a bit global, you know. They've kind of got this profile of something that you might taste from Greece or Spain or, you know, southern France or...
I think it's amazing. It's such a unique project on the Australian wine landscape, and I mean, hopefully inspiration for others to try and follow suit and you know, try and grow these varieties.
That's pretty cool.
Let's have a quick look at the last one here, the 2022 Falangina.
Yes.
But just very quickly, this is, I guess, you know, what's a sign of things to come, and there's more and more varieties being brought into the country. And so any other interesting varieties we should look out for that, if you can recall them all?
There's always something.
More. Do you want to splash of this, or do you just want to sit on the...
I'm going to sit on that. It's such a great one. So is Falangina, by the way. We have just bottled our first miniature macro vin wine from the first grapes from Carricante.
Yeah, great.
Yeah, so we've just planted, we've had enough, you know, cutting or buds to plant our first little tiny mother row in the vineyard in Merbein. Now, it's not Mount Etna.
No.
In Merbein, in the Murray-Darling region. But that's where we start. You know, we start from having, you know, the mother vines or the mother rows planted, where we can start playing around with the variety and whatnot. We could, you know, within the next couple of years, we'll have enough, you know, material to start selling the varieties as well. And Nerello Muscalese is...
I was going to ask, that's the one everyone's waiting out for.
On the ground, literally, and in the pipeline, which is...
So exciting.
It's super exciting. And again, we do not have Mount Etna, unfortunately, but it's, gorgeous varieties that we're really looking forward to working with. And I think there'll be some really cool pockets within the Australian wine industry that could tap into those varieties.
I think so. A lot of inspired winemakers. This is Falangina Campagna?
Yes, absolutely.
And I think it's delicious, like bright, zippy, a bit more acid than some of the other varieties.
Really off the charts, natural acidity, which we love.
Amazing, considering, you know, where it's grown and everything. So, of course, there's the alternative Grape Varieties wine show every year, which is an amazing endorsement of these grapes. And
it's very cool. And you guys should actually come down for it at some stage, because at the end of the judging week...
November?
Oh, it's terrible timing, isn't it?
There's this little thing called Black Friday that, you know, retailers have to pay.
Let's make Black Friday.
Yeah, let's make Black Friday. All right, I'll get in touch with the people over there in the States, and we'll talk that down. It's a one-stop shop of having access to tasting. So at the end of the week of judging, there is an open tasting where you can taste every wine that's been entered in the show. And it's just like, if you're a wine nerd, if you're a winemaker who's into... you know, seeking out new or what's coming up next and that kind of thing, it is like your pipe dream, you know, moment of like getting to try all these amazing varieties all in the one spot. But there's really cool programs around the wine show as well, where there's public events and tastings and seminars, and it's not, our catchphrase is more than just a wine show. And it is, because it's this big kind of family, warm, fuzzy feeling of like, if rule breakers.
Yeah, rule breakers, and saying, hey, we can plant this in the Clare Valley, or we can plant this here, and, you know, taste my version, and, you know, that kind of thing. It's a really gorgeous big family community, and
amazing.
We're all mad at each other.
Well, Tennille, on behalf of like the entire Australian wine public, thank you to you and your family for all you've done to I guess, pave a way forward with these varieties, because I think it is such an important part of our industry right now, but it's only going to be increasingly more so. And you guys have probably like brought it forward 20 or 30 years from where it would be otherwise, with everything you've done. And the wines look fantastic. So.
Thank you.
And it's always great to see and catch up.
Yeah, you too. And like, we just so love what we do. Like, it's very cool going out there and having all these, you know, seeing them pop up on wine lists. Like, you come to Sydney and you like see the varieties pop on wine lists, and you're just like, oh, that's so cool. It's like part of the whole story, but part of the whole Australian wine industry story as well.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Oh, cheers to that. Thanks, Tom.
Cheers.
Cheers.